Welcome back to another video, guys. In this video, I'm going to teach you confirmation technique. So how to know if your setup is good or not. Let's just look at what the engulfing pattern looks like, right? So we have engulfing like this. Okay. And I'm going to make this one red. Okay. So what we want is we don't want our lower time frame. So if this is, for example, H4, and we have wicks above this high, we don't want our setup on the lower time frame to be up here. Okay, we don't want it in the wicks. Now that just means it's lower probability, doesn't mean it's, so for example, there's a time and place, which I'm not going to teach you in this lesson right now. We're just going to go over confirming. I can change this fucking color. There we go. Okay, so you don't want your lower time frame setups to be in these wicks unless they're at a certain zone. So if price is at a certain zone, okay, and I'll explain in this video kind of on that part, but I don't want to go over storyline and all that stuff yet. Right now, just learning to confirm. What I want to see is I want my pattern a majority of the time to occur in the engulfing part of it. So this structure, I want this high, this low. I want my setup to be within this box, okay? Now it's like, let's say there's a wick below, and right, this is engulfing, right, this whole thing. And say there's a wick like this. We can take that up to this wick, just understand you're gonna have a bigger stop loss, okay? So if typically if I see the setup inside the wick of this, I'm not gonna use that. I'm gonna use whatever's up here, or I'll just skip the trade because it's not gonna follow my SL plans, right? But it's still valid inside the wick here, okay? But if you have a setup up in these wicks, it's a lower probability that it's going to work out unless we're coming from a higher time frame zone. Okay, so let's look at. Well, first let's go over the time frames. So, for example, you want to go 2 time frames up minimum, right? So, if you're confirming on, unless it's M1, M5, M1, M5, the minimum is going to be M15. Okay, so even on M1, you want M15. But let's say we're confirming with M15, then I'm going to use H1. If I'm using H1, I'm going to confirm with H4. If I'm confirming with H4, if I'm confirming my H4 setup, then I'm using daily. If I'm using daily, then I got to use monthly. Okay, sorry, weekly. If I'm using weekly, I got to use monthly. Okay, so you just want to make sure that you're a minimum of 2 time frames up, except for M1, M5, it's got to be at least M15 to confirm the trade. And what does that mean? So for example, this is NASDAQ, right? So let's look at M15 real quick. So what do we confirm on M15? We confirm with H1, right? So I see a setup here. I see right here. Okay. So I have a M15 setup right there. Okay. And I need to confirm on a minimum of H1. Okay, you can see the engulfing, this structure is being engulfed by this. This is a valid engulfing pattern, but just keep in mind that it's not the best engulfing. Okay, what makes this one a little bit more special is, of course, we hit the stops above and then we drop below structure down here. Okay, so the fact that we hit stops above and then moved aggressively down, right, impulsively down, and came back up, tapped in, and then dropped. Okay, so understanding that this is an engulfing, but it's not our favorite engulfing. Let's go back to M15. I also see another one here. Okay, in the wick, we grab it, we pull it, we have a continuation. Okay, so trend line continuation right around this area. And then let's go to H1. And as we see, the setup appears in the body. Okay, so that's perfectly okay. If it occurred in the wick, I'd be a little worrisome. But for example, a time where you can use the wick is, you see how we have the H1 break and retest, okay? So it's basically a break and retest, and we reject hard from that area, right? So let's look at our M5. Okay, so we see that M5 taps into it, rejects, and breaks structure, right? We have the entire same scenario going right here. Okay, so we reject, and then we come down. If I wanted to sharpen my entry using this high to this low to this high to this low, right? And I wanted that like sniper to the pip entry type of thing. And in this case, you miss it. So let's look at this one here. Okay, and then if we go to our higher time frame, H1, I'm using this just for an example, by the way. Okay, so this one still is in our engulfing pattern. You can still catch that, just the lower time frame entry. Let's look at M1. Okay, so M1 trades up, down, and then trades back to it here. And it's a wick, right? So let's say to this wick, this is our entry. So whenever this happens, you're gonna start seeing that, like when you're trying to dial it down too much and the setup appears at the top of the wick, it's most likely going to miss it. Okay, it's a rejection zone. So let's look again on M15. Let's go back to M5. Okay, let's say you use the high of this wick to capture your entry. Price never makes it back to there. Go back to M1. Okay, let's look at this guy right here. Okay, so let's say you caught this and you didn't know about confirmation, you would have got really lucky. First of all, if I can fucking do this. Okay, so we have that high, the low, the higher high, the lower low, and price rejects and comes down. Why is this one okay to take a trade from? I mean, any of these are okay because this is that break and retest zone and we drop. Okay, so you obviously have your 15-minute setup here, but let's say you miss that 15-minute setup, it comes down, and then you see this setup here, but you don't see any confirmation, right? Okay, you see how the setup appears at the wicks instead of the body, because you saw that there is really no, and it's kind of a small QM. You'd still take it from like right around here, you'd still get your entry. But this one, right, the only reason we're able to take that is because we've already had a rejection from here. This was confirmed, and this is a part of the left shoulder of that M15 setup, right? So let's say you really wanted to dial down your entry to get a very tiny stop. Okay, so M15 entry here, right? And we're waiting for price to get in here, but we don't want to have SL all the way up here. So at this point, if we're inside the left shoulder, where we're trying to get our original entry on M15, if price comes into it and there is a setup in the wick, this is okay. Okay, so depending on where you're at in the price, you're either going to use the wick or you're going to use the body for confirmation. Okay. This is when we're already trading a setup within a rejection zone. So we're rejecting the zone, a 15-minute setup forms, but the stop loss is too big. So in that zone where we're planning to enter the trade, it could be from here or here, wherever you're marking your QM. After that, we're waiting for that lower time frame M1 setups in here. Okay. And if they do get a confirmation, then that's even better. But if it's trading in this shoulder and you're trying to sniper the entry, then that's fine. Okay. And the same thing goes for all the other setups, SNR1, SNR2. You need that higher time frame engulfing pattern. Okay. You need that.